Well, hello everyone and good morning. It's me, Amanda, with Once in a Wild, and we're partnering up with Once Upon a Party again, and we have a very special guest with us. Who are you?
Wingapo friends, my name is Pocahontas, and I am very excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Pocahontas, for being here. We're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join us. And remember, this is actually a very interactive event, and we're happy to have each and every one of our friends, family, and followers tuning in and coming on this journey with us. Right, Pocahontas?
Absolutely. I am so excited. As you all know, Earth is our home, and all of the animals in it as well they live and abide with us. So it's important that we learn as much as we can about them. So today, I think we should all listen with our hearts so that we can understand the great mysteries of this earth and all of the inhabitants. I'm so excited to learn all of your knowledge, Amanda. I'm sure that it will be very, very exciting for everyone joining us today.
Absolutely. Let's see who's here already. This is our dear friend. She goes by Gemstar, but her name is Viviana. She's saying, I am here. Good morning, Amanda, Ricky, and Pocahontas.
Oh, well, Wingapo, friend, I am so excited that you're on this journey with us. I bet it will be very exciting, and I loved all of the colors that you put into your message. That was very impressive. Reminds me of the beautiful painted sky whenever the sun sets.
Absolutely. There's so many colors in nature, and we're going to see some of them with some of our animals today. We brought several animal friends to meet everybody, and all different sorts of animals with all different sorts of colors.
Oh, yes, wonderful. I do hope that you have someone that Miko might get along with.
Absolutely. I think Miko gets along with just about everybody as long as there's snacks around, right?
Very true. We have to keep his belly full.
Yes. He's quite the eater. Looks like Ryan is here saying howdy. That's one way to say hello.
Oh, yes, very good. I am still learning all of the customs and ways of all different people, but it's very nice for you to join us today.
And Nikki is here as well. She's very excited.
Wonderful. Hello, Nikki. It's very nice that you're joining us today. I do love the green of your hair. It reminds me of the tall pine trees in my home.
Absolutely. Well, Pocahontas, shall we meet the first animal, or do we want to talk about anything else first?
I think we should just dive right in.
Sounds good. You love to dive, don't you?
Yes, I do. Who do we have first?
You're going to see in just a moment, but forgive me, I'm going to have to kind of move around today because I'm down here on the floor hanging out with all of nature today. And we're going to see some animal friends, like I said. So let me go ahead and retrieve the first one.
That's great. It seems like you're in a forest of your own.
Yes. Okay. Who do we have here, everyone?
Oh, wow. How wonderful. That looks a lot like my friend Miko.
He sure does. He likes, he's eating food right now, but he has a mask, just like a raccoon, right? But this actually isn't a raccoon. It's called a ferret.
Wow, very interesting. Now, does he go by any other names?
His name is Loki. That's his name. But he is also sometimes called the European polecat. That is a relative of the otter.
Oh, I love the otters. They always dance in the river. It's very exciting to watch them. Do ferrets spend a lot of time in the river as well?
That's a great question. They don't swim nearly as much as otters do, but they can swim just a little bit if they have to, but they're not aquatic. They're going to be more on the ground. So living on the ground, underground sometimes. And these animals are actually hunters, just like otters are too.
I see. Very good. So they may not like to eat biscuits like Miko then, huh?
No, one major difference between a raccoon like Miko and a ferret like Loki is going to be their diet. So that means what they eat. So a ferret only eats meat. That means they're a carnivore, right? And Miko is a raccoon, and he's an omnivore, kind of like a person. People are omnivores. We eat things like plants and other animals. So that's what a raccoon does too.
Wow, very interesting. And where ferret call home?
What do they call home? They're going to live in Europe, but the this particular species of ferret is only found in human care. So it's a domestic species. So kind of like Percy the dog. They're domestic, like dogs and cats are sometimes, but they do come from a species called the European polecat. So originally they are from Europe. So where John Smith is from, actually.
Of course, yes. And John Rolfe, I will have to ask them if they've ever seen a ferret before. I'm sure they have. There are so many.
They would probably know them as a polecat.
Oh, I see. So he has many names then.
He does have many names. That is true.
Wow.
It looks like you have questions. Are you able to see our questions, Pocahontas, or you need my help?
Let me see. I think, I can see some. Let's see. Oh, hello, Christina. It's very nice to see you. Thank you for joining us on this animal journey. Let's see. There are others. What kind of food does Loki eat? Oh, well, we established that he doesn't quite like to eat biscuits like Miko.
Yes, so he doesn't eat other animals. So this type of animal is a hunter. So they do eat kind of like how a bobcat would eat, right? They're only going to eat other animals, or even an otter too. Otters eat fish and other animals in the river. But ferrets will catch animals like rodents, rabbits, and birds for a living.
Wow, that's so very interesting. Often John Smith calls Miko the bottomless stomach. That's another one of his. So it seems like your ferret does like to eat as well.
He sure does. And as you can see, he hasn't missed many meals. He's a pretty big boy.
Well, that's very good. It'll be good for him. He'll be able to survive the winter.
Yes, so ferrets actually, and polecats over in Europe as well, they actually will go through seasonal changes, just like the seasons change, and the leaves change and everything else. So their bodies will change too. They'll grow more fur during the winter and they'll gain more weight. So right now it's the fall time. And it's not very cold where we live, but where they live naturally in Europe, it would be pretty cold by now. And so their bodies are getting ready to survive the winter, just like you said. This species does not hibernate like a bear. They will stay active, but they will actually store food in their homes for later. They're pretty smart that way.
That is very smart. We do that often as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, look at, it looks like Claire Marie said hello. Wingapo Claire, I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Have you been enjoying the ferret? He's a very, very interesting animal. I can't wait to ask John Smith about him. Although I'm not sure when I'll see John Smith again. He has been traveling a lot since he's got his new ship, of course. Maybe John Rolfe will know more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he does seem to be enjoying that.
Yes, this type of animal can sometimes be found in homes of humans here in the United States, as well as all over the world. Nowadays, they can have them for pets, and they're not for everyone, but they are domesticated, like I said, kind of like a dog or a cat.
Oh, yes. I remember when I first met Percy, he was very strange to me. I'm sure if I saw Loki around, I'd probably think the same thing. But I think that my friend Miko, he would, of course, probably be a little bit hesitant to see him. He almost looks a lot like him.
Yeah, he might be a little bit confused why he looks like him, but not quite, right? But some animals are similar to each other, even though they live far, far away. Even, just similar to how people are similar to each other, yet different from far away.
Yes. That's very true. Oh, it looks like we have a message from Lachlan as well. Wingapo Lachlan, thank you for joining us on this journey. We've been learning about our friend Loki here, who's a ferret. Very similar to Miko, but not quite. He does like to eat, as you can see.
Now, they are very clever, just like raccoons, but another difference is going to be that raccoons have, of course, a ringed tail. These guys just have a solid black tail. And also raccoons have hands, just like humans. They have thumbs and hands, and they can use their hands to grab onto food and, of course, biscuits in Miko's case, all kinds of things, and climb trees. Raccoons can climb trees as well as live on the ground. Ferrets can't climb very well, and they certainly can't use hands to grab things, but they do have claws. It's more similar to like a bear's claws.
I see.
Yeah. So they use them for digging and going underground for safety.
Oh, very interesting. Now, in the wintertime, do they live underground as well?
Yes, they'll actually live underground all year long. live in dens and burrows underground for sleeping, for living with their families, and just for safety. And they also will go into burrows looking for food, like rabbits and rodents and things like that. So they're going to actually live in a den all year long.
Wow, that's very, very neat. I'll be sure to look out next time I'm in England.
Mm-hmm. And you might, of course, see otters or weasels in your homeland, of course, as well, similar to the ferret.
Oh, yes. We see a lot of animals.
Yes. What are some of your favorite animals?
Well, I would have to say one of my favorites is to listen to the wolf cry and the full-born moon. It's very, very, very soothing to me. But I do love my Miko, so perhaps the raccoon would be my favorite.
That's a good choice. Raccoons are wonderful animals. We see raccoons here where I'm from as well. We're actually from the same continent, Pocahontas. I live in North America as well. Very
good. That's very neat. Your home seems very interesting.
It says, Miko better be nice to Loki, Amanda says.
Miko is very, well, we have to keep an eye out for him so that he doesn't get into trouble. He means well, but most often he's just looking for food. So if you give him food, then he'll be your best friend.
Yes.
Just like our friend Loki here. So I'm sure that they would get along well as long as there were enough biscuits for the both of them.
Right.
Sometimes he and Percy have a fight over cherries too.
Yes, true.
Does Loki eat any fruits or anything?
No, they're actually carnivores, so he wouldn't have a problem sharing cherries because he wouldn't really be interested in cherries. And it's actually not good for them. Yeah, it's not good for them to have fruits and vegetables. They only can digest meat. So that is what they eat.
Well, then I think that together they could have a well-balanced meal, I'm sure.
Exactly. And it looks like we have some more comments, I think.
Wonderful. Oh, Wingapo friends, thank you for joining us. I'm so glad that you're here on this animal adventure, and we've been learning so many very interesting things, especially when we listen with our heart. Then it helps us to understand the world around us.
Absolutely. Now, these are social animals, although in nature they're less social, but being in human care, they've become more social. Domestication. They've been domesticated for almost 3,000 years. That's a long time. And the reason that they were done so was because of their hunting skills. So humans actually started training them for their hunting. So they would hunt things like rabbits and rats and things like that over in Europe and help hunters out to survive. Isn't that interesting?
That is very interesting. Very neat.
Okay, Loki, you've done a great job licking all the food. This is his job. He just gets to eat food and be cute. And he enjoys it.
Job to me.
And please let me know if anyone has any questions about Loki. I'm going to go ahead and let him rest down below. And we'll move on to our next animal very, very shortly.
Wonderful. Anna, Loki. Well, that means goodbye.
Yes. Okay, I'm coming right back. Don't worry. Again, forgive me for being on the floor today.
We are no strangers to the ground.
Very good. Okay, let's see who else has something to say. I want to make sure and address everyone. Of course. It says bye, Loki, and you said Anna is the way that you say goodbye.
Oh, yes, of course.
Good. What are some other ways that people say goodbye? Do you know any other ways?
Well, John Smith doesn't like to say goodbye very often, so try not to. I think he says something like, see you later. But we say, of course.
Yes, perfect. We can all learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Different ways to communicate. And animals communicate in different ways as well, don't they?
They do. It's very important that we stop and listen to what they have to say and observe them, since they can't tell us exactly. But if we just stop and watch them and listen with our hearts, just like Grandmother Willow says, then we will understand exactly what is happening and what they need. It's important that we help take care of the creatures of the earth, isn't it, Amanda?
Very important. And we can all do our part to take care of animals all over the world. Would you like to meet another animal right now?
Yes, I would. I'm very excited.
Now, I heard you mention the wolf. The wolf actually howls to communicate with other wolves and to find one another because they're very social. They live in packs together and families together. So the wolf howling at the moon is true. They do howl at night, but they're actually howling to each other to communicate and call one another.
Wow, that is very good to know.
So our next animal is going to be very, very different. It's actually a bullfrog. This is
Oh,
Francis the frog. You've probably seen
wow.
bullfrogs before, right?
I have, yes, of course. Playing in the river, just like the otters. Wow.
Definitely.
He's very large too. Well, he's
Yes. Yeah, on the camera it looks pretty big, but it's actually only this big. Can you see?
wow.
So, but I want to hold him up so you can see him. But this is Francis the frog, and Francis is similar to the American bullfrog, but this is actually the African version of a bullfrog. So that's another continent far, far away, kind of near Europe, but south of Europe.
Yes, I believe I've seen it on a map before.
Ah, very good. So this is an African bullfrog. The other name for the African bullfrog is actually the pixie frog. Now that seems a little strange because pixie usually means small, but their Latin name is Pixiocephalus, which means small head. So that makes a lot more sense. So some people shorten that to just call them a pixie frog.
I see. I see.
They're kind of round with a small head.
Yes, he is. Now, how does his skin feel?
Pretty slimy. So this type of animal actually is pretty slimy. They're called amphibians. Amphibians start their life underwater. That's where that word comes from. It means double life or aquatic and then land life, essentially. So they start their life underwater from an egg. That's all amphibians across the world, whether they be toads, frogs, salamanders, axolotls, all those guys are amphibians. All of them start their life as an egg underwater. And then they hatch out as a tadpole. And then after that, the frog will actually grow into a frog eventually and come out on dry land.
Wow, so they change over time.
They sure do. And they go through a very, very drastic change. They're one of the most amazing animals on the planet because they start from one type of animal all the way to a different type. They change completely. They metamorphosize is the fancy word to say that. But as far as their skin goes, all amphibians not only go through that change, but they also have very slimy skin. It's pretty yucky, to be honest with you.
Does it always feel like that?
Yes, it always feels like that. And they actually need to be wet all the time in order to be healthy. Now, something really neat that this species does, we talked about hibernation a little bit, how the ferret does not hibernate. This species actually does hibernate. So in Africa, they have 2 seasons. We in North America, of course, have 4 seasons, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes, so they don't have 4 seasons in Africa where this frog comes from. They just have a wet season and a dry season. So the wet season will be raining all the time. Lots and lots of rain, lots and lots of healthy plants growing and rivers flowing and everything else and lakes full. And the dry season is the opposite. It's going to be dry. It's going to not be raining very much. So during the dry season, since he's an amphibian, right, he has to be wet. So during the dry season, they have to do something in order to survive. So they dig underground and they stay underground for a long time until the rains come back. And what they'll do is they'll hibernate underground. And then if they feel the rain flowing down into their little burrow that they've dug underground, kind of like the ferret, they'll come out and then they will go back into the river or the lake.
Wow, that is very interesting. I think we do have a question about Francis, right? That's his name?
Francis the frog. Yes.
How long can Francis live? That's a very good question.
That is a good question. Thank you for asking. So Francis the frog can live up to 20 or 30 years in human care, but out there in nature, they usually live around 15 years because, of course, it's the wild and it's a little bit harder for them to survive. But they can live a long time.
They can. It sounds very impressive. And do they get much bigger?
Yes, absolutely. This is one of the largest species of frog in the world. They actually get the size of, well, I don't know if you know what this is, Pocahontas. Do you know what a dinner plate is? Do you guys eat off of dinner plates?
I did have one whenever I ate at the hunt ball with John Wolfe and the King, but we don't normally do things quite as, what's the word? Fancy. We don't have things quite as fancy in my hometown.
Imagine a circle. I'm going to just show you. A circle about this big. That is how big this frog can actually get. They get
Wow.
really big, like a dinner plate, or maybe like I'm trying to think of something else that might be that large, but that's okay. But they get very, very big. They
That
have
we
a round shape. What's that?
Yes. Oh, I was thinking of a basket that we might collect corn.
Sure. Sure, maybe like a corn basket. That'd be a great example. I was trying to think of something you could relate to. But they're very, very large and they're round and they have a tiny head, which is why they call them small head or pixie-cephalus in Latin.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Very
So
cool.
he has a lot of growing to do.
He does. And we say he, but we actually don't know the gender of this frog. So we
Oh,
named him or her Francis. We think maybe a girl because Francis has never made much noise. And speaking of communication, the male frogs actually will sing to communicate with each other. They kind of have a very deep baritone voice, like all bullfrogs do. The males will actually be pretty large. The females are large too, but not as big as the males. But the males do a lot of singing and the females are very quiet. So my guess is that Frances is a girl, but since Frances is still young, we don't really know yet. So we're just going to say either way is fine.
that's very neat. And how old is Francis then?
I believe Frances is about 3 years old now.
Oh, very neat. So she had a long life ahead of her.
Yes. Now
Yeah.
these are actually one of the best dads in the animal kingdom if it is male. But the males of this species take care of the babies by themselves. So the female will lay the eggs, and then dad will actually take over as the only parent taking care of the babies. And he will protect the babies from danger, like predators and things, and other animals that want to eat them. And he'll protect them from drying up. If the river dries up too fast, we all know how much important the river is for these animals and all animals. If the river dries up, he'll dig another canal for the river water to come back and protect his babies.
Wow, what a very good caretaker, it sounds like, of
Yeah, he's a great dad, just like your dad.
course.
Well, if
Wow.
he's a he. I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's great. I wonder where she's wanting to go. Probably to the water.
Yeah, being very wiggly. These types of animals, it's actually very important to talk about this. It's not good for them to be held unless you are a professional like me. So these guys don't do well being held if you see one in your own backyard, anyone, or if you see one outside anywhere, right? If you pick them up, you can actually hurt them. So it's not good to do that unless you know what you're doing. I'm being very, very gentle and careful. And as you can see, they don't really like to be held very much. I'm just going to keep it short. But also, because they have slime on their skin, we can actually make them sick by touching them with our dirty, oily hands. They absorb all kinds of things through their skin, including us and our oil as a human. So it's really important, kids out there, if you see a frog, to just take a picture of them or enjoy them from a distance or just look at them and let them go because it's not good for them to be held or touched.
That's very good to understand because
Mhm.
sometimes animals in the wild, you want to touch them, but it's very good to know that sometimes they just need to be left alone to follow their own path.
That's right. And do you know what a frog's job is in nature? Why they're important?
I'm not sure. I would love to know though.
Of course, I can tell you. Frogs eat a lot of insects. And insects, of course, have their own purpose in nature too. There are many beneficial insects, but there are also some insects that can cause us harm, like mosquitoes. So their job is to help us with the populations of flies and mosquitoes that can harm humans and anybody out there in the animal kingdom as well, not just humans, but animals too. And if we have too many flies and too many mosquitoes and too many roaches and things, then all of us can actually become sick. So we need animals to actually eat a lot of those pesky bugs, and frogs definitely eat a lot of them too.
Oh, that's very good to know. I always love learning about everyone's part in our great earth.
Absolutely. So amphibians, which are frogs, salamanders, newts, axolotls that we met with Moana, all those animals are very, very in need of help. So a lot of them, like I said, they're very sensitive to things like chemicals and poisons and things like that. So it's really important to protect these animals because they're important, right? And also, we want to make sure to not throw our trash on the floor. It's important to pick up trash and put it where it belongs and recycle and dispose of chemicals properly so they don't get hurt.
Wow. Well, it's so nice to meet Francis, and he's got such a large neck. Like,
Yes.
what does that mean?
Underneath the throat there. So that means that they are actually smelling. That is also how a frog will communicate. They will actually fill that little throat there that's moving. They'll fill that with air and then kind of burp it out of their mouth, like like that, right? Everybody knows what a frog sounds like.
Oh, yes,
Some frogs
I have
sound
heard
different.
that before. I've heard that.
There's all kinds of different types of frogs. That's actually one way to know what kind of frogs you have in your own environment, in your own backyard or your own habitat, is by listening for them, because all frogs have different voices. And the bullfrog sounds very like that, but some frogs sound like beep, 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 beep. It just depends on what kind of frog that's out there.
I see. Wow,
I'm
that's
very
very. I do have one last question about Francis. Is he now are frogs like Francis? Are they out during the day or out at night most often?
Good
question. I
question.
do hear lots of different sounds throughout the day and the night, so I would love to know what kind of frogs or animals are awake at different times of the day.
Absolutely. So it really just depends. Some frogs are out during the day, but most frogs are going to be nocturnal, so they're out in the night. And that's most of the time when you're going to hear those frog noises is at night. And the reason they're out in the night most of the time is because frogs eat mosquitoes and flies and all kinds of insects that are out at night too. So that's usually when they're going to be out. Also, for them to be in the hot sun, that's a lot, it's harsh on their skin. So being out at night and staying nice and wet all the time, right, is better for their skin. So they don't really like to sunbathe very much.
See, that makes sense.
That would cause them to dry out too quickly. So most frogs are nocturnal, like I said, but some frogs may not be. So it just kind of depends. Something to definitely research. It looks like we have some questions. I'm going to address them really fast.
Great.
We already said this. How long can they live? 20 to 30 years in the care of humans. Alejandro is saying, gracias, Pocahontas. What is your favorite animals? That's another way to say thank you.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you. My favorite animal, I believe, would have to be a raccoon like my friend Miko, although I do love listening to the wolves howl at night. We did talk a little bit about that before. And Amanda said that most of the time they're not actually howling at the moon. They are talking to each other.
That's right. So a wolf typically will howl when they're trying to find one another, and it's usually at night because it's harder for them to see each other. They have much better vision than us at night, but of course, most animals see better during the day if they're that type of animal. So finding each other at night makes sense. So they have to howl to find one another. But the moon might be out, so they're also howling when the moon is out. Here we go. How long is Francis's tongue? Frogs do not have a very long tongue, but it is still sticky, and that's how they catch bugs and other animals to eat. So the tongue will kind of come out maybe like this far, like an inch or so out of Francis's mouth. And they open their mouth very wide when they want to eat. I'm going to do an impression of the frog eating, and it's really silly, but I want you guys to know. I didn't bring any food for Francis, so I'm just going to pretend to be Francis. So basically, if an animal walks by, like it's a bug or something like that, typically insects, but this type of frog is actually big enough to eat other small mammals and things too, and birds, actually, because they get so big, they can eat those things. So they're kind of, whatever walks by and can fit into their mouth, they're going to try to eat it because they want to survive. But a frog, something walks by like this, they kind of just sit still all the time. They're not very athletic. As you can see, they're kind of round, and they just kind of sit there in the water or in the mud. And something walks by, they're going to reach out and grab it with their tongue like that, with a big wide mouth. They have pretty wide mouths as a frog, and their tongue is very sticky. So they'll go like that. And once they have the animal in their mouth, then they will chomp down and swallow it with their eyeballs. The eyeballs are up here, as you guys saw, and the eyeballs actually sink down when they blink, and that will help them to swallow. And that is how they eat.
That's very strange. I don't think I've seen that before, but you are a very good storyteller, Amanda.
I appreciate that. Next time you see a bullfrog, just watch them eat, and you'll know exactly what I mean. So one thing fun, yeah, one thing that's fun about this frog as well, is they have teeth as well. Most frogs do not have any teeth to speak of. They just have a little mouth with no teeth in it, kind of like most fish. But some fish have teeth and some don't. This type of frog actually does have teeth on their bottom jaw. So they will have 3 pointy teeth on their bottom jaw, but that's mostly for defense. You know what it means to use defense?
Not quite.
Okay, so that means when you are in danger and you need to protect yourself. So the frog that lives in Africa, he's got a lot of predators, he or she. So even though they're a predator, and a pretty robust predator, there's much larger predators there in Africa. Africa has so many large predators that might eat the frogs, especially when they're smaller, like Francis. So they have to have some kind of protection. So they do have 3 pointy teeth on their bottom jaw that they can use for defense. That's what that means.
Well, that's very good. They can protect themselves.
Yes, it's important for animals to protect themselves. Raccoons will bite as well if they feel like they need to do it as well.
Oh yes, I've seen and gotten onto Miko before.
Good for you. Miko's a very nice raccoon, but raccoons in general, they're awesome animals, but we definitely need to respect them as well in the wild. Ooh, thank you, Amanda.
Yes, yeah, I told you, you're a very good storyteller. I can't wait to know about you. She loves. Right. I love to listen to stories in our village, of course.
Absolutely. Do you have any favorite animal stories or anything like that?
Well, I do love to listen to stories about bears. They're always very exciting.
Bears are very good mothers, aren't they?
Yes, they are. It's very, very, very sweet. I love watching them with their cubs from afar. Those are another animal that I wouldn't try to hold.
No, definitely not a holding animal. Neither is a wolf, really, or any of the animals we've talked about. We definitely want to respect animals in the wild and leave them alone. But of course, yes, you do have your animal friends that hang out with you. Okay, we're going to meet a very, very sweet animal that oftentimes people are afraid of. And this is a North American animal. And her name is Harley. And here she is. She's beautiful.
Wow. Oh, my. Look at their colors. Oh my goodness. Her red reminds me of the cardinal.
Oh yes, very good. Cardinals are red if they are male, and the females are mostly brown with a little bit of red. So the cardinals are actually a dimorphic species. That just means that males and females look different, and a lot of animals are like that. This animal is not like that. Males and females look the same, but she's a girl. Her name is Harley, and Harley actually does have a beautiful color on her back, which is red and orange and black and things, but she has a totally different color on the belly. I'm going to turn her over and so you can see the belly.
Yes, the white, like the strange clouds that I saw when John Smith arrived.
Very true. So this type of snake is called a corn snake. And the reason they're called a corn snake is because of their belly. It kind of looks like a corn pattern.
I thought that you were going to say because they eat corn. Which I have seen snakes in our cornfields while picking corn, but we typically are able to get them away.
Yeah, most snakes will just leave you alone if you leave them alone, as you probably know. You probably have more experience with snakes than I do, actually, Pocahontas, being out there in nature all the time. But these type of snakes are totally harmless to humans, although not all snakes are harmless, so we should just leave them all alone just in case. But they mean us no harm regardless. They just want to live and do their thing. And again, they also have a job, which is to eat rodents. So rodents are very important in the environment, but too many rodents can make us sick, just like too many insects can make us sick. So, and we all know that we don't need to be getting any more sick these days. So we need animals like predators in the natural environment. So that's probably what the corn snake or the snake in general was doing in your cornfield.
Yes, it's very helpful.
Yeah, so they're helping you with some of those pesky animals like rats and mice sometimes.
Right. Very good. Now, you said that the pattern on her looks like corn. Does it feel like corn too?
It's smooth, so in that way it's a little bit similar, but it's not nearly as bumpy as corn is. But it is smooth, almost like before you take the husk off the corn. That's what it kind of reminds me of, like a smooth leaf, or like a leather almost, or something like that. But they almost do feel like a smooth leaf now that I think about it.
Very good. And where would you see Harley normally?
So this type of snake is going to be from the United States, right where we live, and they're actually found on the East Coast, more in the southeast. So down in like Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, but they can be seen a little bit further north as well. But they are on the East Coast of North America.
Wow, it's very interesting. And what kind of changes do the corn snake experience?
As far as
Well, do they change like our other friend did, the other amphibian?
I see what you're asking. So since Harlequin here is actually a reptile and not an amphibian, they don't really metamorphosize like an amphibian or even a butterfly. Butterflies do that too. They start as a worm or a caterpillar and then change into a butterfly too. Similar, but this type of animal hatches out from an egg too, but on land and not in the water. And they're going to come out pretty much looking almost just like this, just a tiny version of what she is now. She will have a different color. And then snakes actually shed their skin as they grow. You may know that or not.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they're going to shed their skin.
Like a snake, but it wasn't a snake in the cornfields.
Yes, sometimes you'll see just the skin of the snake. It's just the outer layer of the snake, and it's kind of like clear and a little bit. It's hard to describe it. It looks almost like a dead leaf or something like that, but it's the outside of their skin, and they have to do that about once a month. So about every 30 days, they have to shed their skin in order to grow. And since she's a reptile, she will never stop growing her whole life.
Wow, that's very interesting. Now, how big will Harley become?
Well, their growth does slow down once they become an adult. So they don't get very much bigger than about 5 foot long, and they're pretty slender. So they're not a very large snake, but there are larger types of snakes found in the United States, like the indigo snake and the bull snake, which are also harmless to humans as well. And then we have, of course, venomous snakes like rattlesnakes that get very, very large. And those guys definitely need to be respected and left alone, as we should do for all animals. But this is definitely not one of the larger snakes in the United States. They're pretty small.
Wow, I see. And her head is very small.
Yes. She does have a pretty slender and small head. She does have a red tongue. Their tongue is forked, which means it has 2 points on the end of the tongue, right? And it's very slender, not like the frog's tongue or our tongue.
Wow, very interesting. And how do you know that she's a girl?
Well, it's hard to tell on a snake unless you have seen many, many of them, which I have. It's actually really, really difficult to tell. There are special things to look at. It's hard to describe if you don't understand. But basically, you can take a look at them, but they don't have anything on the outside that's going to show you exactly that it's a male or a female. Once they reach a certain size, it's a little bit easier to tell. So, and I've just learned a lot about snakes over the years, so I do know how to see. But unless you're an expert or something like that, or of course they lay an egg, you actually won't know if it's male and female just by looking at it at a glance.
Oh, I see. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it looks like we had a few messages that came in. Hello, Evelyn. I'm Pocahontas. Wingapo. I'm so glad that you're here with us. We've been learning about our friend Harley is what she is called. She is, as you can see, a corn snake. Isn't that wonderful? Very.
This is a great question.
Arboreal. What does that mean?
Arboreal means that they can climb trees.
Oh, I see. Now, is Harley arboreal?
They are a little bit arboreal. So arboreal means they can climb trees, like we said. This type of snake can be on the land or in the trees, kind of like, well, you, Pocahontas. You climb trees too, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So she could do a little bit of both. This type of snake, the corn snake, is also called the red rat snake. And the rat snakes are known for their climbing skills and abilities, as well as being on the ground. So rat snakes, this is one type of rat snake. They can be seen in the trees, on the ground, wherever. They can kind of go wherever their food is. Good question.
Okay. And I assume that how would you say it? They just wrap around the tree like she's doing with your arm right now. Is that right?
Exactly. So imagine if this was a tree branch, they could just wrap their entire body around that little branch, wherever they might be climbing, or up a rock face or something like that, to be able to get into the tree. Absolutely.
Wow.
You're right.
Very interesting. I don't know that she and Grandmother Willow would have would have a conversation together. I'm not sure how that worked. Most of the time when animals are around and with Grandmother Willow, I would say, they don't always get along with Grandmother Willow. A lot of times will mess with them like she does with Percy. I'm not sure how she feels about snakes though. I'd have to ask her.
Well, she might like Harley because they're very quiet. They don't really make any noises. So I know she's a little bit annoyed by noisy animals, right?
That's very true sometimes.
As we all are. I don't blame Grandmother Willow at all. She can definitely.
It's very hard to concentrate and listen to your heart whenever all of the animals are making their noises. But it's just nature, I suppose.
That's right. And all animals, like we said, have different ways to communicate. The frog will croak and make noises. The ferret may not make a lot of noises, but they communicate with their families in different ways, usually by smells. They're going to smell really well, and they're going to use body language and things to talk to one another. Snakes don't really make any noises either. Some snakes will rattle their tails, and some snakes will hiss, but that's about all that they do because snakes actually don't have any ears. So talking wouldn't really make any sense for a snake.
True. That's very true. Now, do snakes like to stay with their village, or do they go off on their own path?
That's a great question. Snakes, for the most part, are a solitary animal. That means that they live by themselves. Actually, the frog is a solitary animal too. They don't enjoy the company of their fellow kind unless it's time for them to have their babies, right? Like I said, the frog is a great father to take care of his young, but other than that, they want to be alone. So that's the same as the snake too. This type of snake, usually you'll just see them by themselves, but that's how they like it. They like to just kind of be alone and in solitude.
I can understand that. Every now and then I like to go to the cliffs to see if there are any new settlers coming to the land.
Yes, I enjoy my me time as well, Pocahontas. So I understand snakes. But snakes, since they don't hear, they don't really communicate in that way. But they will communicate to protect themselves. Do you know what she does to protect herself?
I'm not sure. What would a snake do?
Well, most of the time, a snake, like any animal, is going to give you a warning before they do anything, or they're going to try to get away. So most animals just want to be left alone. If they're afraid, they're going to try to run away, or in this case, slither away, either away or up a tree or something like that for safety. But if she sees a predator, like another animal that might want to eat her or something like that, what they'll do if they feel cornered, if they feel like they're trapped, is they will be slithering along like this, and all of a sudden they will kind of stand up like this a little bit in a different way, but you get the picture. She's going to stand up and show this belly. That's what the belly is actually for. This different pattern is going to hopefully spook her enemies and scare them away because they don't understand why the snake changed colors. They think it's like a magic trick or something like that. Like, what just happened? There's a spell. So they take a second to be afraid, and then the snake can actually get away.
Oh, that's very interesting. I will have to make sure that we don't ever threaten the snakes to be able to see that. We definitely want them to feel like they are protected.
Absolutely. And snakes are very important. A lot of people, like we said already, are a little bit afraid of snakes, and that's okay. We just want to make sure that you respect them, even if you are afraid of them. There's nothing wrong with that. It just takes a little bit of getting used to sometimes with creatures that are a little bit different than us. But just because they're different than us doesn't make them bad, right?
That's very true. I thought Percy was very strange when I first met him, but now that I've gotten to know him, I see that he's a lot like Miko, and I know exactly what to do with him now.
That's great. It's just a matter of getting to know unfamiliar people or unfamiliar animals, and then you see that they're kind of similar to us in some ways.
That's very true, and you can learn from them too. That's what is most important, is that we learn from each other.
Absolutely. It looks like we have some encouragement from Ricardo. Look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then Sevi says, I love corn snakes. Me too, Sevi.
Wow, that's very neat.
And then Sunny says she loves the color. It is beautiful.
Yes, it is very beautiful. It reminds me of the cardinal, of course.
Yes. There aren't very many red animals, are there? There's just a few of them.
There really aren't. But we do see a lot of cardinals around on our village area. Definitely at different times of the year, of course. They're not as much around whenever it's very cold.
Mm-hmm. That is true. A lot of birds do migrate. Would you like to meet a bird next?
Oh, yes, I would. Thank
Okay, wonderful. I'm gonna let Harley Quinn hang out down below. Thank you, Harley.
Nah, Harley.
She, of course, has no arms to say goodbye.
I know she couldn't hear me either, but that's
No.
perhaps she felt the vibrations.
Yes, and that's a good point to bring up as well. Just because they can't hear doesn't mean they can't sense noises. So they can actually feel noises for the most part, and that goes for all snakes as well. Pretty neat.
Yeah, that is very neat. Very, very interesting.
Yes. And a lot of times it's just because animals are different than us, so they communicate differently. So I'm going to get ready to show you guys and everyone some birds. I'm going to have several birds, actually. So give me one moment to get ready. And you're welcome to talk to our viewers while I'm getting ready.
Sure. Very, very neat. I'm just very excited to be learning new things today. You know, it takes great courage to learn and to meet someone new. So you all joining us on this journey, you all have great courage, and I applaud you for that. I think it's very impressive to learn new things. And Amanda is such a great storyteller. She knows so many things. And you kind of remind me a little bit of some of the people in my village that tell stories around the fire.
I bet you have a lot of stories that you have passed down from generations, haven't you?
Absolutely. It's very, very, my people have a lot of stories. That's how we communicate. Our ancestors, of course.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So we are going to meet some birds that are going to fly in and meet you guys. Really exciting. I'm actually going to hold their food right here, which is seeds. And that may be give you a little bit of a guess as to what birds we're going to meet. It's not a bird of prey. It's a bird that eats seeds, right? So birds of prey are things like eagles. You're familiar with eagles?
Of course, yes. They have very large wings.
Yes, they do. So we're going to meet some smaller birds. Now it is up to them. We give them a choice whether or not they want to come and meet you guys. So we're going to try our best. It looks like they're taking a look at their food. And this is what we call animal training, where we have the animals come on in on their own for a reward, which is their food. You guys hungry today? Maybe if I stand over here. I'm going to try a different spot.
Oh, I hope they join us.
Looks like we do have some interest. And if not, we have another bird to meet as well. So don't worry, everyone. And I know one of your best friends is a bird, isn't he?
Oh, yes. Flick is very, very neat. He accompanies me, but he is what you call a hummingbird, I believe.
Yes, a hummingbird. That's right. That's what we call them. His species is a ruby-throated hummingbird, and they are very beautiful little birds. They don't weigh very much. They're super tiny, one of the smallest species on the planet. And their wings beat so fast. That's why we call them a hummingbird, almost like a bee. And both hummingbirds and bees are actually pollinators. Do you guys want to come down? Come on. Don't be afraid. Sometimes it takes getting used to. Now, our birds are in training, and they're getting used to the surroundings in this area over here. We'll just give them a little time, and that's okay.
Of course. We're not in a rush. Sometimes you have to wait for nature.
Yes, it's important to be patient. Sometimes nature runs its course at its own pace.
Yes, that's very true.
Everybody wants to meet you. Let's go. I think they're a little confused. That's okay. I get confused sometimes too. I feel like we have two, and I feel like if one participates, the other one will participate as well. This particular type of bird is a social animal, and they feel safer if they're together. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of that.
Sure. Well, Flit is not, he doesn't exactly like to meet strangers. He can be a bit shy as well.
There we go.
A beautiful bird. And what is it, a boy or a girl?
This one is a female. She might come back. Don't worry. That was Sharon, and she was a dove. This is an African species of dove, but there are many species of dove all over the world, including North America.
Wow. She's very beautiful. White like the clouds.
Yes, she's very light colored. She's almost white, probably under all these lights. She looks pretty white, but definitely cloud-like. They have very soft feathers. Do you guys want to come down? No? You know what? We're going to try again with them in a little bit, but I have another bird that always wants to come and say hello. I'm going to lift her up. And they're friends, so they can all mingle together. It's perfectly fine. Here we go.
How? My. And what's her name?
This is Pikachu. Pikachu is a cockatiel, which is a type of parrot, a very different type of bird than a dove. But they are still what we call a prey animal. So both of these animals are not predators. So they get along pretty well. In fact, in Australia, where the cockatiel lives naturally, they might be seen with other Australian doves, similar to the doves that we have.
I see. And what does Pikachu like to eat?
Pikachu is a seed eater, just like the doves. I'm going to actually feed her a few of her favorite snacks here. But just like Miko, she actually really likes biscuits. And that's what she's eating today, is kind of like a bird biscuit.
Oh, I see. Well, I will have to tell Miko.
Yes. Now, both of these species of birds are really, really pretty. And birds are wonderful animals as well. I'm going to see if they'll both participate. Aha! So this here is Ozzy. Ozzy is a dove. Pikachu, of course, is the cockatiel. They might all flock together. See how they feel a little bit better being in a group?
Yeah. Oh, they like to be with their village. I can understand that.
Very social. And that's because this type of bird has to watch out for a lot of predators that will eat them in the natural environment, right, Pikachu? So sometimes they feel safer if they're in a big group. So it just took a little encouragement from the other friends.
That's wonderful. So it's kind of like they are in neighboring tribes then, I suppose.
Yeah, and they help one another. That's very, very similar. That's a great analogy, Pocahontas. They, even though they're a different species, they get along really, really well.
Very good.
So this type of animal, the dove, like I said, are from Africa. And you can see them all throughout that continent of Africa. And the same thing with the cockatiel. They're from Australia, a different continent on the other side of the world. But you can see them all over that continent. So both of these species are not in danger. They're doing really, really well out there in the natural environment, which is really awesome.
That is very good. And what kind of things other than seeds and biscuits do they eat?
So this type of bird here on the plate, they mostly just eat seeds. They're going to eat things like grass seeds and all kinds of things that they find like that. But they might eat occasionally plants as well. And this type of bird here also eats seeds and other plants too, and sometimes fruits too.
I see.
So vegetarian, they only eat vegetation and no meat.
I see.
Now, both these species are actually very good parents as well. We talked about the frog being a good dad, but both of these species actually are what we call a monogamous species. So that means this pair right here, the doves, they're a monogamous pair. That means they are basically married, and they have 2 children together. And they're really good to each other. They take care of one another, and they're very loyal. And they also help to raise the babies together. So they will have usually 2 eggs at a time every time they have babies. And mom and dad will both sit on the eggs as they need it. And then both mom and dad will feed the babies too.
I see. Wow. So they help each other and work together to raise their young.
They sure do. And like I said, they also will live in a group together typically for safety. So not only do they live in a pair like this, 2 together, they're also going to typically live around other doves too, to help them and kind of mentor them and help them stay safe.
Wow. So they like to be around their village then, I see.
Yes, they sure do.
Wow. And what about Pikachu? Does Pikachu have family as well?
So Pikachu is also a species that would flock together with other birds, like I said, and they also do have a monogamous bond. So they will have a male and female together, and they will stay together their entire life. And the same thing, they will actually raise their young together and take care of their babies and their families together too. So they're very similar, even though they live across the world from one another.
I see.
Yeah. Which is a lesson to be learned, right? Just because we live far away from one another doesn't mean we don't have similarities.
That's very true. Yes. We found a lot of things that we had in common with the settlers that came all the way from Europe. There was a lot of different, but we have found that we can live in peace because we are more similar than we are different.
That is totally right. And same thing with animals. We have a lot in common with animals, even though we're very different. Birds have feathers instead of hair. Birds can fly, and we can't fly. I wish I could fly, but we just can't. But we are similar in some ways, like our family groups, etc.
Yes, of course. Sometimes I feel like I'm flying whenever I go cliff diving.
Oh, I'm sure. And you're very fast on your feet as well. You're a good runner. These birds aren't very good runners, but they can fly pretty quickly. Both species are pretty fast in the air. They're not a slow animal, neither one of them. And that's very important when you have to get away from danger, like predators.
Oh, I see. Yes,
now, both species
are very small.
Yes, they're very, very small. So being so tiny, they have to be fast. That's their only way to defend themselves. They don't really have defenses. They have the ability to get away quickly.
Yes, Flit is very fast. Sometimes Miko has a hard time keeping up with both of us, but he keeps up pretty well.
Yes, I know Flit is very
usually, unless of course he's distracted by food. Then we just find him back at the village.
Yes. So I noticed, of course, the hummingbird, they call them the hummingbird because of their wings, and they sound like a hum, almost like a bee's wings. Did you know they can actually move their wings 500 times per 10 seconds?
Wow, I've never been able to count it, but I could definitely hear it when Flit is near me.
Yeah, it's very, very fast. And they only weigh about as much, I want to say 3 grams, which is about as much as what we call a copper penny. So very, very tiny.
I see.
But all birds are very lightweight. They have semi-hollow bones. So they have very different bones than humans and other mammals. They have feathers instead of hair, which keep them very, very lightweight as well. Yes. And they actually don't have that many organs inside of their body. They have only what they need. And you know that birds use the restroom a lot, so they don't really have a bladder either. So that all those things keep them very, very lightweight. And so they can fly very easily and get away from danger.
Well, I'm very glad for that because they are very beautiful.
Yes, they are. They are very soft as well.
What kind of animals do these doves need to look out for that they may need to run away from?
That's a very good question. There's so many of them out in Africa where they're from. Doves exist all over the world, including the North America and South America and Australia and Africa, all over the world, Europe as well. They have to look out for animals like cats. They would have to look out for foxes. Raccoons might eat them as well sometimes, and all kinds of animals might eat small birds like this. I'm trying to think of other examples. Snakes sometimes might eat small birds too. Lots of them.
Yes, so they probably try to stay very high and fly very fast then.
Absolutely. And since this type of bird actually eats grass seeds, they have to come down to the ground sometimes. So that's when they're going to be the most in danger, is being on the ground, because they're not up in the trees in safety, right? So they're always kind of looking around. They're staying with their families. If one family member flies away, they will typically all fly away because they're basically following the leader in that case, and there might be danger nearby.
Now, one time when I was out in the forest, I did come across an owl and, well, 2 owls and their babies, and they were hiding in a cave. And the male owl, I think, was guarding the cave while the female was feeding them. Is that something that all birds do?
Not necessarily all birds, but many birds are monogamous, and owls do that sometimes. And this type of bird as well. They would both sit on the nest. They would both take care of the babies, feed the babies, protect them to the best of their ability. They are doves, but they try. And yes, so a lot of times they will take turns. So mother or father will be sitting on the nest, and the other one will actually be finding food for one another. Many birds do take care of each other in that way. That's a good question.
Very good. I thought it was very interesting. They were in a cave, they were like their nest was inside of a cave, and I had not seen that before. So I didn't know.
So this type of bird doesn't do that, and neither does, well, actually, the cockatiel does. So let's talk about the doves first. I think they've had enough seed, so they're gonna go fly and rest on their own, and that's fine. This type of bird, the doves, they will nest kind of just like in a tree or on a flat surface sometimes. So doves and pigeons actually do really well in what we call cities, and cities have flat surfaces, and they will build a little bit of a nest on the flat surface and just kind of sit on their eggs that way. So they're not too super particular about their nest, but cockatiel as well as owls and some other types of birds will actually go into a hollow tree, into a hole in the tree like you described.
Oh,
So yes, I'm glad you brought that up because cockatiels do that too. And that's for safety. So they're inside that tree, so it's a little bit safer from their enemies.
sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting.
It is interesting. And all animals have different ways of bringing up their baby.
I see. Well, I was just noticing his colorings, that he has yellow like in the middle of his head, but then he has some, is that red or orange? I can't quite tell.
So if she backs up a little bit, you can see that she's mostly yellow all over. She's just very light yellow. She almost looks white sometimes. And the cheeks are actually orange, very, very bright orange, almost red. So you're not wrong. And the orange cheeks are features of all cockatiels, the species, but she's a very, very special coloration that you only see in human care. Out there in the nature, they're going to be gray with white on their wings right here on their shoulders. And they might have a little bit of a yellow face with the orange cheeks. They always have the orange cheeks.
I see. Wow. He's very beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, let's see who has questions or comments really fast before we move forward. Our doves are going to sing for us in the background, if that's okay.
I would love to hear that.
They kind of sound like an owl. They kind of have like a hoo-hoo sound. It's more of a cooing noise. And the male is actually going to talk a lot more than the female. I forgot to tell you their names. The male is named Ozzy and the female is named Sharon. And this is Pikachu, of course. Oh, Amanda is a big fan of yours. Another Amanda, not me.
Oh, wow. Well, I will, for your kindness, I will always remember it.
That's very sweet. Easy name to remember.
Yes, of course.
Okay. And everyone's excited to see Pikachu, of course.
Yes, I meant to ask you, what does Pikachu mean? Does it have a special?
That's a great question. So it's actually another character that we really, really like, and it's just a name. So I don't really know if Pikachu means anything. I wish I had the answer for you, but it's a name of another famous character that we know here in the United States. And it's a cartoon. Yeah.
So another story, I suppose.
She looks like Pikachu, the other one.
Yeah, I see. I will have to ask John Rolfe about that and see if he knows anything.
Good. Charlotte really likes the cockatiel. Yeah, they're one of my favorites as well, Charlotte.
Yes. Pikachu is very, very beautiful.
Yes. There aren't very many parrots in the United States. I can't think of any parrots in the United States, but or North America, I should say. But in South America, there are parrot species like macaws and Amazons and all kinds of things. And parrots live all over the world too, for the most part. And how we know she's a parrot is she has a beak like this that kind of curves down. Her beak is very strong. Very, very strong. And she also has special feet. If you can see her toes, she actually has 2 toes pointing forward and 2 toes pointing backward, if you can see that. Very different than most birds. The doves have 3 toes in the front and 1 in the back. That's one thing that makes parrots special. They have special feet to be able to hold onto their food and eat it like this, like a hand. And they can also climb with their feet a lot easier because they have a stronger foot. An owl also has the same type of foot, but they use their feet for hunting instead of climbing.
Oh, I see. I thought that looked familiar.
Yes. So Amanda also wants to say this.
What does she say? Cliff diving fast runner Pocahontas would be the most adrenaline-producing wilderness guide ever. Well, I have been known to show the settlers a very adventurous side, but not many can keep up.
Oh, we do have the meaning of Pikachu from another fan.
We do.
This is what Pikachu means.
Very interesting. And electric, what does that mean? Like, is that a good word?
Are you familiar with lightning?
A lightning. Yes, of course. Of course.
So lightning is a form of electricity. So electric has to do with that. We have electricity here in this room, which helps us to see. But how the other Pikachu, the famous Pikachu that we named this one after, is actually not a real animal, but it looks like a mouse, and it's yellow with orange cheeks too, and it actually produces lightning. So that's why it's called an electric mouse. So of course it does.
Wow, strange.
Perfect.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that definition.
Yes, I'm very glad that we got the answer to that because I just didn't know.
All right. We love to know the meaning of names. It's very important to my people.
That's very, very good. That's very admirable because a lot of times we use words just like Pikachu, and I didn't know what it means. And it's really fun to learn new things about common words that we use or new words.
Yes, of course. And sometimes words can mean multiple things, which has made it a little hard for me to understand things that the English settlers have said and names they've used. But I'm understanding a lot more now that we've made peace, of course.
Yes, that's so great, and you're doing just fine, Pocahontas. You're doing good. Okay, I'm going to get ready for our final animal. Would you like to meet him?
Yes, of course. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit and make sure everything is in place. And we're going to meet a wonderful animal, and I'm sure you're going to know exactly what he is when he comes out. He's rather large, so I'm going to back up here, and Pikachu's going to just stay with me, I guess. And we're going to get him ready. All right. I'm going to get him some snacks to eat while he's out here because I think he deserves a little treat, just like Miko.
Yes, of course. And it'll keep him on good behavior.
That's right. Give him something good to do. Come on out here, buddy. He's going to take his sweet time, I guess. So he's got to come through the woods here. He's just sniffing around to see. Oh, my goodness. There he is a little bit, but he's leaving already. He'll come back. Don't worry.
That looks a bit like a rabbit.
It is a rabbit. Come here, Sandor. His name is Sandor. And once he realizes where the treats are, I'm sure he'll come and say, hello, here he is.
Yes, of course. My goodness. He's very large.
He is very large. Sandor is actually a very special type of rabbit called a Flemish giant. It's another European rabbit species and breed. This type of rabbit comes from the European rabbit, just like the ferret comes from the European polecat. They're kind of similar that way. But it's very similar to the rabbits we have in North America too.
Wow.
How do you know it's a rabbit? Everybody, how do you know it's a rabbit just by looking at him?
I would think perhaps something maybe with his ears. Perhaps.
Very long ears.
Very long ears, yes. And, well, let's see. I've seen maybe different tails. Is that...
He does have a very short tail. So all rabbits have very large ears like him, and they have very short tails. That's in fact where we get the term bunny, is from the bun-like tail. It looks like a hair bun on a woman. If you wear your hair in a bun sometimes.
Yes. On very special occasions.
Yes, so or to get it out of your way.
It's very comfortable for me. But
I see. Yeah, you prefer your hair down, don't you?
Yes, of course. Wow.
Rabbits also have really big back legs. So they have back legs that are really big for kicking and running and jumping, and long ears to hear 2 miles away. They can hear really far away from them. Their ears also move independently, whichever direction they want. So they can hear all the way around their bodies, and they can hear up to 2 miles away, like I said, for danger. So that's really important to them.
I see. Yes, they could hear a predator coming.
That's right. Their main predators are going to be all kinds of things, like we talked about with the doves, but they also have to watch out for owls and hawks and eagles. That's going to be a very major predator for a rabbit. But honestly, any predator that can go after any animal small enough, this size or smaller, can go after a rabbit. So they have a lot of animals to listen for, to watch for, and to smell for. They have a great sense of smell. Their nose is always smelling as long as they're awake. And they have really big eyes, and their eyes can see all the way around their body.
Wow. Well, I imagine that's helpful as well.
Definitely. Now, right now, he's actually getting very special treats, which are called bananas. Have you ever heard of bananas?
Of course. The fruit, right?
Yes, it's a fruit. It's an exotic fruit, though, probably to you. But if you venture a little bit further south, you can find bananas. Where they're from, they don't have bananas, so it's a very, very special treat for them. And it's not something we give them every day. It's just for special occasions like this, to meet you and everyone today. But it's his favorite treat.
Well, what kind of things do they eat normally?
Good question. So this type of animal will mostly eat grass. So out there in nature, they're going to be grazing on grass and eating grass all day long, just like a deer or other animals like that, or even a horse. Horses do that too. And that's pretty much going to be their main diet in nature. They might eat other plants and things, and maybe occasionally a fruit that falls from the tree. This animal cannot climb, so they don't eat very much fruit. It's only special occasions. But here in with me, he eats a lot of hay and what we call pellets, kind of like biscuits, and of course fruits for just training and special occasions.
Wow. Now, not all rabbits look quite like our new friend here, do they?
No, Sandor is a special type of rabbit. He's really big. So this is a very special type of what we call a breed, just like Percy the pug is a dog breed. So Percy the pug, actually, his ancestor is the wolf. They're very similar that way. But through time, humans have been able to breed them and selectively breed them. That's what that means, for looking a certain way or being a certain size. So this type of rabbit comes from a European species, just like the ferret came from the European species. But over time, they were able to breed them for how big he is, the size. So he's an extra large rabbit. This is the second largest rabbit breed in the world. The first largest rabbit breed is called the continental giant. This is the Flemish giant.
Wow. Well, he's very large. Will he be getting any larger? He will keep growing?
No, he's about done growing, thank goodness. He does eat a lot, so it's a lot to take care of. No, but he is about, he's coming up on 1.5 years old, and that is going to be as long as he'll be growing. When he was a baby, he was a little smaller, and now he's about done growing. And he can live to be about 7 to 8 years old, maybe even 10 if he's a very, very old rabbit.
And does he enjoy being with his family and in his village, or does he like to be alone?
That's a great question. This species of rabbit is very, very social. So in nature, they would live in groups together, and they actually live similarly to the ferret underground. They're going to have a den underground. In fact, this species that they come from, not this breed, but the species they come from, the European rabbit, they come from the same exact place, Europe. So both the rabbit and the ferret would know each other in the wild. They're not friends though, but this type of rabbit will live together with their families underground.
I see. That's very good. And we talked about it earlier. Do they hibernate?
Good question. I don't believe they do, and I could be wrong. That's something for me to research. I don't think that rabbits hibernate either, just like the ferret does not hibernate either. There's not that many animals that actually do that.
They are very, their fur, I'm sure, keeps them very warm.
Absolutely. And the reason that I say that they probably don't hibernate, and I'm pretty sure on this, I'm still learning all the time, so forgive me.
Sure.
But they do have very, very warm coats, like you said. And this type of animal has to be eating all the time. They can't really eat a whole bunch of food and then go to sleep. That would actually be very bad for their system. So when you have a rabbit in human care, you have to make sure they're eating every single day and pretty much all day. They graze on grass all the time in nature.
I see. Oh, let's see. Do we have any messages or questions about him that you can see?
It looks like we do. I have someone's excited for Sandor. That's his name. Huge bunny. Absolutely. He is huge. 22 pounds. Oh, here we go.
Does he sing when I try to sing? Well, I'm not sure. Do rabbits normally sing?
I wouldn't say they sing, but they can make a little bit of noises here and there, but mostly they make sounds if they are upset. So he almost never makes any noises, but they can kind of make like a squealing noise if they feel really upset, if they're scared or something like that. And that's kind of like a defense as well. They don't have a lot of defenses because they don't have sharp teeth. Not really. They can kick and try to scratch their enemies if they happen to get in trouble that way. I'm gonna come back over to you guys. But they can squeal and in order to kind of scare away a predator. So if that makes sense. So if they get grabbed by something, they can go ee, and hopefully the predator goes, oh my gosh, and let's go.
Yes. So probably not singing like the birds or even the frog might.
That's right. So rabbits aren't very vocal. They, like I said, they can make a couple of noises here and there. Sometimes they make a little bit of a purring noise, but it's very quiet. But no, they're not very vocal. They communicate through body language. So they might use different movements and things to talk to one another.
Wow, that's very neat.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Now, I do know that you said something about some of the birds singing to us earlier. Is that still going to happen?
I think they've sung all they're going to sing. It looks like they're comfortable way up high. They feel comfortable being perched up high, like in a tree. They're not in a tree, but they're up there. He did a little bit. He did a little bit. So for the there, yeah, it makes something like
I wasn't sure if it was him.
Yeah, it's like a sound a little bit.
Hear that. I'll definitely have to keep listening for other birds and animals like that when I get back to the village, of course.
Yes, of course. Well, that is our final animal. It looks like he's going to go explore on his own, which I know you can relate to as well.
Yes, of course.
Pikachu's still here. Here's a good question. How coarse is his fur? His fur is very soft. In fact, it's so soft that if he were to get wet, he's not a good swimmer. And if they do get wet, it keeps them too wet, so they can get too cold. So it's very important for rabbits to stay dry as they can.
I see. Does coarse mean, is that another word for rough?
Yes, that's exactly right.
I see.
That's another word for rough. I'm going to let him rest as well down below. One moment. There we go. He's safe and sound back in his burrow.
You've made quite the sanctuary for them. That's wonderful.
He's hanging out in the plants over here, which is natural for a rabbit. They like to kind of hide and be underneath things for safety. Okay, everyone. Let me make sure we didn't miss any questions or comments that we want to highlight here.
Yes, I've had such a wonderful time learning about all these animals with you.
Me too, Pocahontas. Thank you so much for being here. I think that's going to pretty much be the end of our time together. I know we're going a little over time, but that's okay. I do want to thank you so very much. And if everybody could either say goodbye in their own native language, that would be wonderful. So we know who's still out there. We still have people watching.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I know I have. I always love to learn new things and just understand the world that's around us. So I'm looking forward to exploring the forest again and seeing if I could see any animals that are like these, as I know I won't see very many of them in where my village is.
But there are a lot that are similar to who we met today, of course. And maybe you can try to figure out ways that they are alike and different. That's really important. And of course, it's really important to protect our Mother Earth, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's very important.
There's so many ways that we can save the planet. Very, very important for all of us because this is our home and all the animals as well live here too. So we can do things like recycling and picking up trash and things that we see on the ground. That affects everybody. We can also protect animals' habitats and also not using too much water because we only have so much water on this planet. So all kinds of things that you can easily do right where you live to help the planet.
Yes, I think that's wonderful. And if we all work together, then we can definitely take care of the world around us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so very much to everybody.
Yeah.
People are saying goodbye. We appreciate everybody tuning in and commenting and asking questions. And we'll see everyone next time here at Once on a Wild and Once Upon a Wild.
Yes, so thank you for joining us. I look forward to exploring with you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Anna.